Welcome to Let's Talk Memoir, a podcast for memoir lovers, readers, and writers. I'm your host, Ronit Plank. Let's Talk Memoir is also a Substack newsletter. About once a month, I publish memoir craft advice, answer questions about memoir writing, and share my latest classes and upcoming events. You can go to substack.com and subscribe to Let's Talk Memoir for free. You can also find me, Ronit, on Instagram and on Blue Sky. Welcome to Let's Talk Memoir. Today, my guest is Sue William Silverman, who is an award-winning author of 9 works of nonfiction and poetry. Her new book, Selected Misdemeanors, Essays at the Mercy of the Reader, is a collection of flash essays. Her book on the craft of writing, Acetylene Torch Songs, Writing True Stories to Ignite the Soul, won the 2024 Ippy Silver Award. Her memoir and essays collection, How to Survive Death and Other Inconveniences, won the Gold Star in Forward Review's Indie Book of the Year Award and the Clara Johnson Award for Women's Literature. Other works include Lovesick, One Woman's Journey Through Sexual Addiction, made into a Lifetime TV movie. Because I Remember Terror Father, I Remember You, which won the AWP Award, and the Pat Boone Fan Club, My Life as a White Anglo-Saxon Jew. She's co-chair of the MFA program at Vermont College of Fine Arts, and her media appearances include The View, Anderson Cooper 360, and PBS Books. Welcome, Sue.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here. It's just really nice to see you.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I was just thrilled and so excited to talk about your book. And I do want to mention that you were my guest for episode 91 of Let's Talk Memoir, where we talked about your book just before Acetylene Torch Songs. And
That's right.
yeah, and in that conversation, for listeners who are interested, we talked about the arc of reflection and the arc of the character and the narrator. And we talked a little bit about craft in that sense. And today we're going to talk about craft, of course, but we're also going to talk about this form that you have created for this book, which I really want to dig into. So first, let me have you talk a little bit about your new collection, Selected Misdemeanors.
Sure. So first, I really want to reassure everybody that these are emotional misdemeanors. They're not crimes. They are not crimes in the legal sense. I've never served jail time. So I'd just like to get that out of the way. But sort of the major tension, so this is a collection of flash essays. And the major tension in the book is really like the narrator is searching for home and comfort and safety, a sense of stability. That's what she sort of wants. However, these selected misdemeanors get in the way of that. These emotional misdemeanors, in other words, sort of sabotage the narrator's desire for this home. So that's sort of this internal conflict of what she wants, but what her actions sort of prevent her from getting. And so the selected misdemeanors are kind of transgressions, miscalculations of love, both internal and external betrayals, kind of relationships with inappropriate men. Just for a couple of examples of the misdemeanors, when I started college as a freshman, I almost immediately had an affair with this older married man who lived across the street from my dorm. I mean, clearly not a way to start college. So that's one of my misdemeanors. Just a second one, just briefly. When I was married for a time, I was living in Galveston, Texas, and one night I was my husband was out of town. I was in the CD bar in Galveston, overlooking the Gulf, and I was drunk. And I was alone, but I suddenly decided, oh, I think it's time to get a divorce. I mean, just this narrator who really is not capable of making good choices for herself. Even as I say, even as she wants this home, she doesn't know how to get it. So that's sort of the overall sort of view or theme of the book.
Yeah, and that makes me, I want to chime in there because that really calls upon the divided self, which we talk about a lot in memoir, and this idea that what you want, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I think you basically said that what you want is this one thing, but what you keep behaving in a fashion of is to repel that or to ruin it. It's like this division, right? So it's not just a story about I'm searching for home and everything is great and it's happening well for me and things fall into place, or even it's not a story of you keep searching for a home and that's the situation and maybe plans fall through for an actual physical home. We're talking about the internal conflict.
Yes, and home sort of capital H, so not like a
Yes.
house, but
Yes.
more a sense of belonging.
Belonging,
Yeah,
right. One of
yes.
my favorite themes. And of course, when you know a little bit about your backstory or your other stories that you've written and the other memoirs, we understand where this could come from. And you get into it here. But actually, that's a question I have a little bit later about approaching material again in later works. So we'll talk about that. But when did you get the idea for this particular collection and have the sense you'd incorporate this sort of recurring persona on the pages?
So I actually started writing this book during the COVID lockdown. A lot of time, not much to do, but also a lot of fear. And so for me to sort of combat that really fear that a lot of us or all of us were living through at that time, I write. I mean, that's a way for me to sort of feel centered and a sense of comfort. So I started writing this book during that period of time. And yes, there is a part of this book is our photo essays, photographs
Yes.
that are essays. And I think that's what you mean by this recurring persona is somebody I call her Misdemeanor. And to sort of play on the title Misdemeanor, so it's Miss Miss, and then so Miss and then Demeanors. So that's her name. And so how that came about, almost from the get-go, I thought I wanted these photograph essays.
So for those of you who are
Okay, good.
watching, there's this gorgeous picture of Sue. I don't know what decade that was, but you're in a black leather coat or a vinyl coat.
Yeah, a black leather jacket. And so there's the photograph, and then up here, this is all the title of the essay. So it starts with the title of the essay. And all the titles are very long, so they really set up the photograph. And then we have the photograph. And then at the end, this is sort of the essay itself. They're all just three lines, little snippets. So, and they all initially they were all called The Girl. So this title is Misdemeanor Considers the Time She Stood Under the Boardwalk at the Jersey Shore, a location so distant from love that the pillar was all that held her up in the face of the oncoming storm. So in this picture that says love is here every day. So that refers to that. So initially the misdemeanor persona was just called the girl. And
Hmm.
that seems sort of generic and not that interesting. But it wasn't until like the last part of the book that fell into place was like 2 days before I had to send off the manuscript. And it suddenly occurred to me, misdemeanor would be a much better way to give this persona more
Hmm.
definition.
Yeah,
So
specificity.
exactly. So the girl became misdemeanor. And then in this particular photo essay, the little three-line essay itself, it just says jacket, black leather, girl waiting for trouble, smile, knowing. So there are about 13 or so of these photo essays just sprinkled throughout the book. And there are also some postcards that are sort of essays as well. And for me, it was sort of a way to make the whole collection more cohesive. Because
Mm-hmm.
I have like 71 flash essays. That's a lot of essays. And how do
Mm-hmm.
you sort of hold them all together? So those were two of the things. Have these photo essays sprinkled throughout and these postcard essays kind of sprinkled throughout, sort of as a unifying factor.
Yes, and I do want to point out that, and everyone will have to read this so they can see what I'm talking about, but I do appreciate the ordering of the essays. I saw what you were doing there. In addition to, so the actual language, the essays, the flash pieces, you have arranged them in such a way so they do progress, though this is, a flash essay book. And they also kind of call upon the previous essay occasionally. So you are getting a point of reference from the previous one, not exactly like a totally linear book. That's not what I'm saying.
No,
There's like a kernel in that next essay that I see why you put it after the essay right before it, which I really like that because I'm an organizing kind of structural person. So that was really satisfying to me. And I want to ask you, this is your ninth book, is that right?
yeah, I
Yeah,
think
wow.
so. Yeah, I
I
think
wanted to make
so.
sure because that's kind of what I saw, but you never know if those things online
Yeah.
and if I'm counting right. So with so much experience behind you, I'm curious. I have a couple of questions that kind of bottleneck, and you can pick whichever one you like. But how did the writing and revision process for this one feel to you in comparison to the previous books? And are there elements of putting a personal narrative together that have become easier for you? Can you feel a creative intuition in different or stronger ways now? Any of those questions I would love to hear from you about.
Yeah, so I can't really say it gets easier. Sorry, everybody who's listening, but that's sort of a good thing. I
Hmm.
mean, okay, yes, I've become a better writer. I do have more intuition about what I'm doing, but every book is going to have its own kind of challenges. And but that's how you grow as a writer. I mean, so I welcome these challenges. I mean, my first two books were straight through narrative arc, memoirs straight up. The second two books were memoirs in essay form, so the essays were a lot longer and more thematically held together. And then this was, they're like 71 flash essays, but everything does have its own challenges. But I would get bored if I kept sort of writing like the same structure or exactly the same theme.
Hmm.
So I welcome it. But that said, yeah, I mean, I sort of know more what to look for. Like, okay,
Hmm.
no, this isn't going to work. I need to sort of try. That might become a little bit easier, but really, I would encourage writers not to be afraid to sort of push their boundaries, push the envelope of where they want to grow as a writer. So you're not just repeating yourself because that does get boring. I mean,
Yeah.
give yourself new challenges.
Yeah.
Write in different sort of voices that kind of sound different. My
Hmm.
first two books were the first book was sort of the voice of this young wounded girl whose father was sexually misloving her. And then Lovesick is a book about recovering from a sex addiction, and the voice is a little bit tougher and edgier. Then those memoir and essay forms, I sort of put a lot of that darkness kind
Mm.
of behind me. And
Hmm.
so the is much more ironic, in parts playful, use more humor. And so the voices can change, structures can change. So just be open to all of that so you do evolve as a writer.
Yeah. And what about the flash form, the flash essay form appeal to you? Was that the challenge you gave to yourself, or is that just the way it came out this time?
It sort of came out that way, but looking back on it, I really had hardly written any flash. And I'd written some poetry, and which I like because it's sort of more immediate
Yeah.
gratification. Like, you only need to do that much. Oh, I'm done for the day.
Yeah.
So, but I really had never done it. But I published a few pieces in that Brevity Mag online journal. And I really always loved the form. I love reading
Mm.
that when it comes out. And so I thought, I really do need to try something new. And I just decided, look, this experiment may completely fail. That's all right.
Hmm.
It's COVID. I don't have anything else to do. Might as well go for it.
Yeah.
So I just tried it, and the essays just really started coming out.
Yeah.
And short, I mean, some of them are a paragraph, but a couple of them are maybe even 9 pages, so probably really much longer than a typical flash. But most of them are around 3, 4 page markers.
Hmm.
So it's just I needed a different challenge. I wanted to
Yes.
try something new.
Yes, and you've written about what I mentioned earlier is that in selected misdemeanors, you do talk a little bit about the sexual abuse. I'm calling it abuse. I know you called it misloving, and I can call it that if you want at the hands of your
No,
father.
no, whatever you want. Yeah.
Yeah, and you include, for example, some of the details in this book. You allude to some of the details of the sexual abuse you suffered at the hands of your father and the difficulties and betrayals in your earlier marriages. But here you do it in some fresh ways. And what I'm curious about, like for example, I write a lot about my childhood and my mom leaving and my family breaking apart and the guru, etc. But I don't want to keep saying the same thing. So what advice would you offer to the memoirist or essayist who has explored a pivotal experience in their lives throughout their work and would like to continue writing about it, but maybe knows that they need to bring freshness to it?
Exactly. And that is the key is that you don't want to keep writing that same subject over and over. And let me just sort of tell you how I figured it out. So I wrote this first book about growing up in this incestuous family. Okay, then the second book is about the sex addiction. So I thought, I'm just going to write about sex addiction, not even mention my father. Well, how well did that not work, you know? Like, where did the sex addiction come from?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
because I so was didn't want to write about him again. So I realized like halfway, through the first draft, now this isn't working. But what I realized is that first of all, he doesn't have to play a big role, but now it's really a matter of my father in each book is a metaphor for something else. So in
Mm,
Lovesick, he's a metaphor for this narrator's inability to differentiate sort of between sex and love. So all I have to do is have like a couple of really short scenes, very short, just to show that motivation for why I had a sex addiction in the first place. I had to
mm,
show the motivation for
hmm.
that. So I could show him less and show him sort of from a different angle. So then I thought, okay, now I'm done with my father. And then never done. And then I wrote the Papoon Fan Club, My Life as a White Anglo-Saxon Jew. Well, so only about three or four essays are actually about Pat Boone. It's really about this narrator's misguided search for spirituality. So again, I can't write that without mentioning my father. But now he takes on he's a metaphor for something else yet again.
Mm.
He is a reason because my father is Jewish and he was hurting me. Pat Boone, for those of you who don't know, is like a 1960s pop music icon who's is known for being really squeaky clean, very Christian, four daughters, all of that. So when I was a kid, I wanted him to adopt me. He had four daughters. I wanted to be his fifth daughter because now Pat Boone was a metaphor for the good father. So all I had to do in this book was just sort of change the metaphor for my father, is that he's sort of the reason for having this misguided search for spirituality. So again, I don't have to have much of him in there, but just enough to show that now the role that he played in my misguided search for spirituality.
Yeah. We
So
sort of see your evolution throughout the books. You're not, beating, I hate this expression, but you're not beating a dead horse. It's a
exactly.
jumping off place for this next part of your life and understanding.
That's right. So every book he plays less and less role. And then my next book is How to Survive Death and Other Inconvenience. I thought, now I'm really done with him. But but no. So in this book, I mean, I've always been really afraid of death. And so part of it is because he did molest me as a child. So he sort of like stole my body in that way, which is kind of a form of death. So I can show him now he's the metaphor for this. So, but the whole book is really, it's not even about just physical death. I write about sort of the inconveniences part, how to survive death and other inconveniences. That part is more about how to survive things like divorce or
Mhm.
loss of a loved one or illness. So there are a lot of it's looking at the idea of death very broadly,
Mm,
like emotionally and everything. So he plays a very small part. And again, he's a metaphor for something else. So
yes.
every book is just that I could not escape him. I mean,
Yes.
we have certain core narratives within us that are just part of us that it's really hard to write without some mention of them. So
Hmm.
just embrace it, say, okay, I've got to do it, go with it. But knowing that you aren't repeating yourself, you're not telling the same story, that every time you're going to be looking at the theme different, the metaphors differently.
Yeah, I really appreciate talking about that. It's almost as if we have these compasses within us, right? And my compass was kind of messed up from the beginning or rerouted strangely. And so the way I'm going to set myself off in my world and my viewpoint is going to be absolutely informed by this sort of tilty, strange compass, right? And then that's where I'm going to come from when I write, when I see the world. Even the way I watch people parent is going to be informed by my own experience of being parented or not being parented, right? I can't escape from that. And that's where my work is going to come from.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And it's really just a matter, as I say, of embracing it, but also knowing it's not rewriting the same story over and over. You are going to come at it from different angles, different viewpoints, different voices, even. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
can make it interesting both for you as you write it And for your reader, let's say for somebody who actually wants to read all my books, yay, that would be great. But to know that they're not going to keep reading the same
Yes, it's your
story.
interrogation of that experience and your viewpoints, the internal dynamic, not just what occurred to you. Oh, it's so good. So I was hoping you could read some of the sections we talked about,
Yes,
and
yes,
I think I wrote them down. I'm happy to. The first one is from Strange Entanglements, Coming Attractions on the middle of page 8.
yes, I have that marked. And so just to quickly set that up, this essay is about how myself as narrator, I watch certain movies and I kind of embrace the heroines in these movies and kind of want to become them. And so, and part of it is I give these movies sort of tongue-in-cheek reviews. So that's where this starts. And this is about the movie The Lace Maker. My review, 5 stars. I really get this movie. Who cares about the meaning of dialectic? Just for the record, I don't understand the word phenomenology either, the subject of my second husband's dissertation. This angers him. He mocks my lack of intellect. But I don't care to know about phenomenology. I thought I'd loved his mind, only to discover that's not the kind of knowledge I seek. Besides, I'm already trailing after another man. I can live without dialectic phenomenology. Like Palm, its obsession I can't live without. Also, for the record, I prefer dubbed in dialogue to reading captions. I like the disconnect between the mouth and the words coming out of it. It's exactly like a faithless lover. And then it starts a new section called a psychological prediction. How could the fortune teller have failed to predict I would only be married 3 months before I begin an affair with an orthopedic surgeon who mends broken bones? I had thought, once married, desired for other men would be sutured shut. But marriage isn't encompassing, isn't enough. I need more and more. How to stop this compulsion? I begin therapy. I sit on the couch in my therapist's blue office. It's quiet as a womb, only a low thrumming. A secret message? I study him as if for clues to my future. He leans back in his chair, perfectly balanced, his hands clasped behind his head. Frequently, when he asks a question, he raises an eyebrow. I begin to raise a questioning eyebrow too. The therapist explains that cognitive dissonance is a state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes based on the movies I inhabit. I believe at the time this is a condition experienced only by women. We pursue what we call love with men capable of emotionally devastating us. Even when we foresee the oncoming crackup, we're unable to avoid it. Cognitive dissonance, my belief that obsession equals love. Nights, I lie in bed fantasizing about the therapist, that secret blue thrumming. I imagine scenarios in which he will leave his wife and children to run away with me. I drive by his house, stalking him. The fate line. Most of my relationships consist of affairs with married men or with men old enough to be my father. Can that which appears grotesque in either fiction or reality be love? Adele H. is real. Palm and Sybil are fictional, but does it matter when the emotions feel true? These women's stories seep inside each strand of my hair, deeper, until they fill me. I seek, will want, the captivating desolation of their obsessions. The fortune teller does not predict I will absorb all their silvery heartbreaks, all their enchanting sorrows.
Thank you. I also picked, I believe, two different pieces from your section of the book entitled Grieflets.
Yes.
There was Expiration Date and there was Into the Wild of the Calm. And are you up for reading those too?
Of course, yes.
Thank you.
So the first part I read, that's just an excerpt from a longer piece. This is the entire essay, and it's called Expiration Date. I board the plane wearing an off-the-shoulder peasant dress I bought in the bazaar in Sarajevo. It's bright yellow, like a warning signal, before switching to red to stop. I wave goodbye to my boyfriend. Is he still my boyfriend? Who will remain in Dubrovnik another week. But he's already turning away without waving. I plop down beside an older man, my seatmate for the transatlantic flight. He wears a wedding ring, a three-piece suit and tie, a white pressed shirt. The air conditioning is cold. I slip off my leather sandals and wrap my feet in an airplane blanket. Over dinner, we engage in chit-chat, my job on Capitol Hill, my first after graduating college, his work in the import-export business, his wife, kids. We soon run out of sunlight and small talk. Stars orient the sky, but I am consumed by the emptiness of space, the closeness of strangers. I whisper that my boyfriend and I had a fight. He asks what it was about. How to explain the fight was and wasn't about my inability to provide directions as we drove from Split to Sarajevo to Montenegro to Dubrovnik, lost in the middle of Bosnia, or was it Herzegovina? My boyfriend yelled at me for being, well, stupid, unable to read or follow a map. But he was the one I was unable to read. We had dated for several years, and watching his intemperate mistral eruptions, I wondered how I had never seen him before, or maybe he had never seen me. We were directionless, lost on roads more Byzantine than those through foreign terrain or untranslatable gazettes or globes. Yet now I'm here on the plane. Our fights seem to belong to another continent, to a different language, one I no longer speak. The man, half laughing, squeezes my hand and whispers that the best part of a relationship occurs during the first 10 minutes. When the man stirs beside me midway across the Atlantic, I realize he's awakened from a nap. The yellow-red tip of the sun is lifting from the horizon. I removed the blanket that had been warming my feet and spread it across his lap. I barely hear him unzip his slacks over the roar of engines. I lean over. Less than 10 minutes. So clearly one of my misdemeanors.
I really enjoyed reading it the first time, but hearing you read it was a new experience, and I'm really glad you did.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm dying to ask you about craft in a second, but I would love you to read Into the Wild of the Calm, if that's okay,
Yes.
on page 143. This is
Sure.
a self-contained essay as well, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
And this is one of the shorter ones.
Yeah.
And Into the Wild of the Calm. I stand at a nighttime window in my home in Michigan, watching two deer sleep in my snowy yard, enclosed by fences and heavy foliage meant to keep them out. Yet here they are. I want to don my parka as if it is fur and curl up beside them. Will they accept me into their herd? Where will we hoof in the blue light of dawn? I leave behind teacups, spoons, photos of nameless ancestors, books whose words I no longer remember, shed hair, mismatched socks, memories, dejected membra, scattered fragments, in order to enter the scent of evergreen, the flick of dune grass, the lap of waves along the lakeshore, the quiet of snow, the exuberance of stars. I pound my hooves, casting open the untethered, the unreined, the unseen windows of others' lives.
Thank you. So, what would you say to writers who would like to work on flash essays, who are interested in shortening their work or trying for this form? How do you gauge that what you have is enough, that has enough heft to hold its own in a piece like this? And how do you know to push ahead and you need to add more? And I know that's like a really simplistic question in a way, but what's a good place to start?
Yeah, no, but there are some sort of general guidelines, I think, around Flash, or at least what I've created for myself. And so pretty much each essay sort of focuses on one of my obsessions. Clearly, I'm an obsessive person, which is really good if you're a writer because you all have a lot to write about. So this book sort of is around like there's 71 essays, sort of around 71 obsessions. So you have an obsession, but then you need to find a sort of a metaphor for it. And for example, there's one essay, it's called Emerald Isle, and it takes place where I grew up in the West Indies. And I used to sort of spy on my parents' kind of elegant parties, and there'd be like these long stemmed liqueur glasses filled with creme de menthe, which is an emerald colored liqueur. And I was absolutely obsessed by this creme de menthe. The color of it is just gorgeous. So on the face of it, you think, well, that's not an essay. I mean, that's like seriously boring, right? And so I had the obsession. I had the creme de menthe. What do I do with that? Well, I have to write about creme de menthe as metaphor. So what I did is like, what does that actually mean to me? Why creme de menthe? Yeah, it's pretty and it's emerald. But then the women drink it or the men drink it, the liqueur is gone. And so the metaphor is about the ephemeralness of beauty, how you can have something really beautiful and then it fades away. So you have to have your obsession. You have to have like an object that can describe the obsession. And then you need a metaphor that is universal because, like, obviously, not everybody is going to even maybe know what creme de menthe is or know what it looks like or anything like that. But you don't have to because if you as the reader have ever experienced something like about the ephemeralness of beauty, that something is beautiful and then it fades, I mean, a flower, anything, then you would understand the essay, you would be brought inside it. So that's, you have to do that quickly because like in a flash, you don't have like this long narrative arc to fully develop. Like I could have, if it were, say, a long essay, I could fully develop something about the ephemeralness of beauty and all these examples and stuff. But you don't need that. All you need is like this one obsession, one little thing to that would be revelatory of it. And since you don't have a lot of space to develop it, very little exposition, very little background. You just get to the heart of the matter. So if you want to write flash, focus on metaphors because metaphors are universal. And, metaphor is basically something that's outside of yourself, like say creme de menthe. You describe it in such a way that it casts light on the narrator's interiority, which was my sort of sadness about the ephemeralness of beauty, but also the joy of how beautiful creme de menthe is. So you have to get there just really fast. And the other thing is that beginnings and endings, again, of course, are important to all of anything we write. But in Flash, maybe even more important, you have to start right in a scene. Like just you can't sort of meander around, kind of building up to something. Just the scene starts, bam, first sentence, you are in a specific place, in a specific moment of time. Something is happening. Begin right there. And then with the endings, you want to sort of deepen the theme a little bit, but you can't do it through like kind of a summing up, like, well, this is sort of what this is the takeaway message. You can't do anything like that. And
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have that long narrative of a reader spending like 250 pages with you, you want to end with a really strong image that almost reverberates, sort of like an after image. that the reader can take with them so that they will remember that really short flash. So the best way to end is with a sensory detail rather than just kind of a thought or a summary. Think about ending with a sensory image that's going to be rather striking, that will stay with the reader, like an after image that just will keep reverberating.
Yeah, I feel like that is absolutely what you did with the airplane scene that you just read. I'm thinking of the blanket and the zipper of his trousers. And then I'm also thinking about the one with the deer in the snow, about the antlers and hoofing out into the forest. Like that is absolutely still in my head resonating. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, thank you. But that's the more you really are going to need to write as imagistically as possible to let these images sort of move the action forward because you don't have time to build like these long scenes with a lot
Hmm.
of reflection or anything. You just have to do it quick.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful form and it's really worth practicing, you know.
Yeah. In a way, it's almost like you have to really just trust the reader. You have to have faith in your ability to craft something that is immediate and that is going to be bracing enough to bring the reader in and not worry about what you said, the exposition and, the ramp up to the actual action. It's a confidence or like a conceit. Like you're going to start reading my piece and I'm going to bring you there, reader. And reader, know that the reader's going to stay with you. You just have to have this bravado to do it almost, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thinking about the different books you've put out, do you enjoy this form more than a linear type of memoir? Do you like them each in their own way, or what are your thoughts now that you've written in so many different forms?
I really, it's funny because when I'm with one form, that's the form I really love. And then I move to another form. No, this is the one I really love.
Yeah.
And so, but I think having written, so two memoir and essay collections, and this flash, so that's just five books that are straight creative nonfiction, not counting, the poetry or the craft books. I know that within me right now, I don't think I have another long memoir that would say would be
Mm-hmm.
250 pages. So I think whatever I write is going to be somewhat fractured. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I don't know if there'll be actual flash pieces like this book. I'm not really sure. But whatever I do write is going to be more sort of narratives that are interrupted and fractured, sort of truncated
Mm-hmm.
and kind of in pieces. So I think I know that much. But the thing that's sort of fun about like these flash pieces, putting it all together, is sort of like putting a puzzle together. Like, how are these pieces going to speak to each other? So, in that sense, it's almost like playing a game, which can be kind of fun. Like, does this piece belong in part one or part two? Should it come before or after this other essay? And sometimes that's really frustrating. Like, I don't know where to put this piece. But other times, ultimately, you stick with it and trust it. The pieces kind of fall into place, and that can be kind of fun, as opposed to like if full-length memoir, there's the comfort of knowing, okay, this chapter is going to follow this chapter because that's how the events unfolded. So there's a comfort to that. But like every morning, you sort of know where you're going to pick up and
Mm-hmm.
continue on. And this is more challenging in some ways. But again, I like to be challenged as a writer. And so I embraced it and I really had fun putting all the pieces together.
I mean, that's kind of the fun part. Like once you've written all the material, I mean, I find that to me, that's like exciting. It's work, but it's a different muscle.
It is a different muscle, and it is, you can sort of play, you can print it all out and spread it across the floor and sort of shuffle
Yeah.
pieces around. And yeah, it is kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know the last time I interviewed you and I asked for book recommendations or books that informed your writing process, and you showed me that you had this amazing collection of titles on your website. So I don't know if I should ask you for a book or two recommendation for our listeners, or if you want me to send everyone over to your site again.
Well, yeah. So my website is SueWilliamSilverman.com. And on there, if you scroll down the right-hand side, you'll see this long, massive list of creative nonfiction books that are divided by category. But I will mention that for Flash, a book that I really enjoyed is Heating and Cooling by Beth Ann Fennelly. So I really do recommend that for flash nonfiction. But I also really recommend that website I had mentioned, brevitymag.com, because I don't know, maybe four times a year they put up a bunch of brand new essays I mean, you can just spend hours just reading by all these different authors, all different, they're all flash, like not more than 750 words, but different forms. And so that's like a really great way just to get a broad spectrum of what this form can do.
Yeah, it's a great resource. I love sharing that with students.
Yeah.
Well, okay, you've been giving advice this whole time, but I'm going to ask you, what advice would you like to share with writers working on their memoirs?
You can take a writing class, read some books on craft, of course. The craft is something that you can learn, take a class, get a writing instructor, whatever. So the craft we can learn, but I think one of the harder parts is having the courage to write what our stories are. So I want to, first of all, encourage you to trust your story, trust your narrative, know that these words are your words, that they belong to you, and just claim it, claim your story. Because if you don't write your story, nobody else will. And then it's lost forever. And that's incredibly sad. And, I teach it in the MFA program at Vermont College of Fine Arts. And I would say most of our students, they come and they learn the craft. But most students, I mean, and myself included when I started, we're scared to share our story. We're putting our vulnerability out there. I mean, we are just letting people inside of our souls, and that can be scary. So just know you're not alone, that there is a community of other writers doing this. So we sort of borrow each other's power in a way. So find like a writing community of supportive people to sort of be with you as you journey through this, and just believe in yourself. Know that you might not think you have the courage to write this, but you really do. And also, when you're writing, just pretend nobody else is going to ever see it. That frees you up a lot. I mean, I still do that. I just write what I want to write, how I want to write it, and just trust that. And then once all is said and done, once I finish it, then I can think about putting it out in the world. So you break it up into steps like that. You remove a lot of pressure thinking, oh, well, I'm just going to write this for myself. Nobody will see it. Or I'll show it to, my writing instructor or something. But that's it. So don't think about the outside world
Hmm.
initially. That's like step two, and that's down the road. Because the most important thing, and sometimes you may decide not to publish, that's fine too. But the most important thing is to get your words down on paper.
Yeah, thank you. So you just shared your website, and where can people get a copy of selected misdemeanors, and are you on social media? Should people follow you there?
Yes. So I'm on Facebook, Sue William Silverman, also Instagram, Sue William Silverman. The book's available at Amazon, bookshop.org. It's through the University of Nebraska Press. If you go to my website, you can see links to buy it, or go to your local bookstore and ask them if they don't have it, ask them to order it for you. So you can get it pretty much wherever books are sold. And
Great.
thank you if you want to read it. That's really nice.
Yeah, I'll put all the links in the show notes. And this was just lovely. And I want to thank you so much for being my guest, Sue, and for joining me again on Let's Talk Memoir. What a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's just, I mean, I love talking to you. So thank you so much. I'm very honored.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Memoir. For more about this episode and my guest, please visit the link in the show notes. You can also find the complete catalog of Let's Talk Memoir episodes at ronitplank.com/Let's Talk Memoir. If you'd like updates about upcoming memoir workshops and memoir writing resources, you can subscribe to my Substack, or you can sign up for my newsletter on ronitplank.com. Those links are also in the show notes. And lastly, if you like this episode and the show, please go ahead and share it with your friends, and you can also subscribe. And if you have 2 more minutes, you can rate and review it on your podcast platform, which really does help other people find the show. Thank you so much for being here.